My fellow YouTube friends, how are y'all doing this evening? I hope all is well with each and every one of you. Today I come before each and every one of you to tell a story that y'all probably may have not heard. Y'all may have known that I did a VLOG vlog of Hurricane Idalia back in 2023 that was about 2 hours long. And as many of you know, that was the second major hurricane to hit Valdosta, albeit less than what it was to begin with. The link to it is displayed right below in the description box if you want to get all the full details of what went on during that day. But y'all are probably wondering what had happened last year. Well, exactly 1 year ago today, with my dad feeling very uneasy that something was not right, we would leave the house and evacuate around 5 o'clock, and we relocated to a safer place for shelter. If I can find it on here, alright. This is from the U.S. National Weather Service out of Tallahassee, Florida. On this day, 1 year ago, was a low system which then would form into Tropical Storm Helene, and then would really, and I mean really, gain strength into a major Category 4 with the name Helene. Hurricane Helene made landfall as a Category 4 hurricane near Perry, Florida. And from the moment it made landfall, it went on to produce widespread, significant damage. Impacts spawning from the Appalachia Bay coast to Apalachicola. A few facts. Strongest hurricane observed in Appalachia Bay on a record by max sustained winds. And I'm going to tell you, this hurricane was much worse than Idalia in 2023. The deadliest Conus landfalling hurricane since Katrina in 2005, 9th most intense landfalling Florida hurricane by a minimum center pressure, 5th costliest U.S. Atlantic hurricane. Name retired on April the 2nd, 2025. And even though we may be quiet at this moment, hurricane season is still at its peak. And we have 2 potential storms. One of them is possibly going to be hitting South Carolina in a couple days, but who knows? It could change. Let's see here. And I'm going to say, in all my years of living in Valdosta, Georgia, I have never witnessed a hurricane this deadly. So, we're going to come back in a little bit, and while we take a break for a second, we are going to have a look at the places where we stayed throughout the 281 days that we were out of the house. And here's what they are. Yes, viewers, those are the places that we have stayed since Hurricane Helene plowed through my hometown of Valdosta. And while we're at it, I have found some more detail about this hurricane in my previous statement. This is an overview. Hurricane Helene made landfall just east of the mouth of the Osceola River around 11:10 p.m. on September the 26th as a major Category 4 hurricane. The max winds estimated around landfall were 140 mph, with a minimum central pressure estimated around 938 millibars, and made landfall traveling at 24 miles an hour. And I know during this time we are still at the shelter and awaiting, because it would eventually slow down and slowly start churning and wreaking path of destruction straight up from Florida all the way right here to where we are. And I also want to let each and every one of you know that before we continue, around 2:30, September 27th, my uncle was riding out the storm at my grandparents' house. While I was sleeping, I woke up and I heard word via text message that he sent to my dad that a large tree just landed in our living room. And I knew what that meant. That large pine tree that was not far from the road was going through very tough winds. That was just enough to make it uprooted and damage my house. And I also want to let each and every one of you know that this house right here was built sometime in the 1940s. And this house has never sustained damage for the past 32 years until this fateful day, 1 year ago today. And as we continue, this hurricane brought widespread power outages, tree damage to southeast Florida, Big Bend, and southern Georgia, especially right here. This is the third storm to affect this region in the previous 13 months. The storm surge and wind damage were the biggest impacts across this part of the county. Storm surge was estimated to be greater than 15 feet along portions of the Big Bend. Fast forward motion limited catastrophic flooding across the Gulf Coast, but Helene eventually caused catastrophic flooding across the Appalachians after moving inland. And also, Hurricane Helene started out as a broad area of low pressure in the northwestern Caribbean Sea, and conditions were very favorable for development. The outlook showed an 80% chance of a tropical cyclone development over the next 7 days. And by the 24th, Helene would be named as a tropical storm and would form to become Hurricane Helene by the 25th. I would say that would be near 24, maybe 72 hours. I could be wrong. Rapid intensify in the Gulf and then make landfall as a Category 4 hurricane major around the midnight of September 27th, which will mark in just about 2 minutes. Helene would then quickly move north through the CSRA, bringing the most damaging storm in our history. And I'm going to say, to this very day, my family was traumatized. And a lot had went on over the years. I've never showed anyone these videos or the photos of my house until now. But here, we're going to show. That is what my house looked like before the hurricane. And if you look real closely here, let's see here. When I said a tree fell through, it was this one right here. That had to be almost near like 100, almost 200 feet, which would be enough to cause damage. And this right here, this would be the after effect. Exactly 1 year ago to this very day. And right here, it would be tarped for quite a few months. And if my memory don't fail me, a few months have passed, and I'm not sure if you can see here, but this says February 20th, repairs finally commence on my house. I'm not going to show all the repair photos, but I will show y'all some of what it looked like before and after. This right here was when the whole entire roof and damaged area was taken out. And this was nothing but walls. And as of this very moment, this is what it currently looks like as of now. And we're going to have a look at the inside of this from before and afters. This is what my living room looked before and after the impact of when the tree fell through. And it was a good thing that this whole entire room did not cave in because of that cabinet right there. And here's what it looked like on the other side. Now, fast forward. This is what it looks on the inside. Looks real neat, don't it? And viewers, I will say, this is a hurricane that will definitely go down in the books as one of the most deadliest ones that we endured. And also, what was not shown through this story we were rotating between the shelter at Park Avenue and this. This is where we would also stay during the weekend while rotating between the shelter. This hotel was not very far from my work. And I'm going to tell you right now, it was an entire 281 days since we were out of here, moving from place to place and getting everything together and worked out, because there were like a lot of bumps in the road in the process of trying to get the house repaired. And I'm going to tell you, it was a bumpy road, but in the end, He was watching over us, and victory came on the winning side. And once again, viewers, this hurricane will be remembered as one of the deadliest. If my memory don't fail me, I know I mentioned it made landfall at 11:10 in Florida and traveled straight through southeastern Georgia. It did do damage quite along the way, and all the way up to Statesboro, where my aunt and uncle and my cousins live. And then just as it reached North Carolina, it curved and then stalled out and dissipated into like a, I would say, low pressure system or cold front. And it would go on to produce catastrophic flooding on the east side of Kentucky, Tennessee, and the west side of North Carolina. And I'm going to tell you, a lot of people lost their lives. If we were to learn something from this, never, and I mean never, take Mother Nature for granted. And we always remember, be prepared, set up a plan in case if a hurricane ever comes your way. If you feel unsafe at your house, evacuate and find shelter. That way you will be safe, where there will be generators running when the power goes out, so you won't have to sit in the dark and in hot areas, which we had to do since Hurricane-Idalia took out the power here, which probably lasted like maybe, I would say, 4 days. I had decided that I wasn't going to video the full extent of the damage of Hurricane Helene because it was a whole lot greater compared to Idalia. But if you want to view my story of Hurricane Idalia, the link is in the description box below. So, I want each and every one of you to remember this, viewers. And let's continue to move forward and hopefully for a better lifestyle. Stay safe out there, and remember, always be prepared if a hurricane comes your way. Be prepared.